Panhead. Are there slides to print? So, smooth jazz. I expected better too, TV. I was thinking like Weather Report or, you know, some Sanborn. I get it. I understand the jazz was below snuff. Maybe the Jazz Crusader, little Joe Sample in there, but quite frankly, little Tom Scott on the saxophone. I get it. I wasn't happy with it. I mean, you can never put down Sade, but that wasn't Sade. I don't even know if I ever pronounced her name correctly, but Sade. Anyway, we've got about another minute, and I just wanted to make sure that the sound was okay. Hopefully everything's going through, and yeah, we're going to record this because big requests here on how do you run these scans on Thinkorswim, and that's exactly what we're going and again, Sade. Yeah, Sade. I got it. David G. What's up, my man? How are you, sir? How'd you like that? I threw Weather Report out there. You guys remember, or baby, I don't know if you guys maybe remember, not baby, maybe, back in the 70s when I grew up in Chicago, we had this place called Ravinia Park. And it seemed almost every summer, Ravinia Park, they used to throw, I mean, George Benson played there one year, Jackson Brown, and anyway, they put a moratorium on really good bands for about a decade. Now it seems they just got some just incredible acts. Santana played there a couple of years ago, and of course you get, oh boy, I wish I had good memory. Steely Dan plays. They, you know, pretty much anyone that's anybody plays there. I'm thinking Allman Brothers, drummers, nephew, and his wife. Boy, I wish I could remember these bands. He's awesome on slide guitar. But any event, I was going to tell you the name of the group, Spyro Gyro. I don't know if you guys remember Spyro Gyro. There's a jazz kind of group. Any event, we're going to start Justavinia in just a minute, and it is home of the Chicago Symphony or Nora Post. Oh my God. Look at you. Nice trivia there. All right, so give me a second. We're going to hit the record button and get this party rolling and see what we come up with. Ron Zen, Weather Report, Birdland, one of their most famous, Chick Corea. How could we not? We got some great. Good taste in the group here. I know most of you are probably not in high school, the ones that are making like a Chick Corea comic, TB. We know you didn't graduate high school recently. Reminding me about Chick Corea. And then you got Herbie Hancock. I mean, the list just Stanley Clark, School Days. Stanley Clark, School Days. For those that are sitting here going like, I thought John Person was going to talk about scanning. You know, life isn't just about scanning, but needless to say, it is about trying to get by and have and do a good job. So with that said, we do have tools to help us with a good job. And we're going to start left to right, or we're going to start from top to bottom. Mark P. says Miles Davis. Now, how can you, I mean, you know, the list just goes on and on. You guys are jazz aficionados. Thank you for the. By the way, there's the Jazz Fest in Chicago, which was always cool. Chicago had just great. What a great time to grow up in Chicago. By the way, one last thing I'm going to plug about not just jazz, but the Blues Festival that happens. And the Blues Festival, to grow up in Chicago, by the time I was a senior year in high school, I must have seen Muddy Waters at least 6 or 7 times. 6 or 7 times. Can you imagine Muddy Waters? Kids today don't know who Muddy Waters is, but anyway, we do have an icon in Chicago, Buddy Guy, who used to play with Junior Wells, and the famous bar called Legends. And for some of you that might remember Chicago well, how about that little bar called Biddy Mulligan's? You remember that one? Anyway, all right. So I promised that was it for the music. No more. Let's talk about how do we get together and put charts on Thinkorswim and combining what we do, which is Person's Pivot Study and Person's Pivots. And you've probably seen this before, but we're going to add a couple twists, especially since we're trying to come out with adding a few things. Eventually, I talked with one of the big guys. You see his commercial on TV all the time. That's not officially his daughter, by the way. I'm talking none other than J.J. Kinahan. J.J. and I had a little conversation. It's going to take, I got to talk to Mr. Script himself, David Kears, and we're going to do a couple things, and I'll share with you what's intended to get done, but it's going to take minimum 90 to 120 days. But we're going to talk about what's going to be intended to get done. All right? How's that sound? So did everyone hear intended to get done? All right? Intended. Trading's risky. Take a second to read this. And for those who got a lesson on jazz but do have no idea who I am, for those that do know me, just go get a cup of coffee real quick. I wrote this book well over, it's feverishly overdue to the publishers for the second edition, but the Candlestick and Pivot Point Trading Triggers, this book is super thick, and it really was a dynamic book, as well as really launching the popularity with some candle patterns, my stuff, backtest studies on candlesticks, the relevance of when dojis and hammers and shooting stars formed at highs and lows of different markets. And apart from that, many of you are familiar with PPS, is what we're going to talk about today, as well as Person's Pivots. And we are, of course, the creator of the Trading Triggers educational program and other fine materials. And I am a member of APTA, which is the American Association of Professional Technical Analysts. So this book, Mastering the Stock Market, actually in that book, Mastering the Stock Market, we talked about how to run scans with Thinkorswim. Now, Thinkorswim has had, I couldn't tell you how many releases since this book came out, but as well as a facelift. And but things still work about the same, by the way, and they've just added a few more tools. But quite frankly, nothing's really changed in the way we look for market trend reversals. It's just how we're able to get the information and what we're trading. What we're trading instead of just gold or gold futures and gold options. We got GDX, we got leveraged ETFs on gold miners, and there's just like another leveraged ETF on the retail, which I want to get into a little bit today, called RETL. Not really optionable, but I'm thinking RETL is one ETF that's been in a liftoff mode over the last 2 weeks. Some of you were with me Thursday night. We did a quarterly market outlook, and obviously we're looking for market follow through to the upside, had some ideas on retail apparel stuff, and a lot of the names, and I'm going to share this with you real quick, not to bore you, but just to share something with you here. If we go over here and I show you this file, you will see that, unfortunately, I messed it up, but I created it on 6/25, last printed out. This, I shouldn't have done that, but I think I corrected something by mistake. But in any event, this was the weekly analysis that we put out, and a couple things that we were looking for. I just want you to read this because I think this is pretty important. Number one, we are looking for, this was back for the week ending, or the week beginning, shall I say, 6/27. So the prior week we talked a couple trade ideas, and one of the trade ideas was this little guy here, Ralphie Boy, as we call him in the trade room, Ralph Lauren, RL. The weekly trend volume is down, volume monthly trend, and we're going to talk about how to run scans for this in just a minute. But this is a name that we are looking to buy either near 87, 89 level or on a weekly close above 98. Well, it dropped back down to 87, 98. Another one that we're looking at was Under Armour. And as we are looking for a lot of stocks in the retail apparel sector as we start to get the back-to-school type of concept. So where did we get that idea? Well, the funny thing is, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the funny thing is in this book, Mastering the Stock Market, we talked the first chapter in this book, the very first chapter, we talked about seasonal sector analysis for equities. It's that important. Now, I've got a little experience with seasonal analysis because since I first started in the business back in 1980, actually as a runner in 1977, I contributed for now over 8 years ago as the co-author and editor of the Commodity Traders Almanac. This book right here, the Commodity Traders Almanac, what I did is I said, you know, less and less people are trading commodities, more and more people are trading stocks. What we should be doing is reflecting the stocks and ETFs that correlate to the underlying move of commodities, such as gold and the miners and treasury bonds and TLT, or the inverse ETF TVT. We also should be probably looking at agricultural stocks like John Deere, and looking at other segments of the marketplace. And so that was what the concept that we put together, looking at seasonality of stocks to commodities. And this book here, Mastering the Stock Market, really helped pinpoint the seasonalities. Now, we've already had someone mention that in Thinkorswim, Thinkorswim added a seasonality tool because more and more people have been using seasonality. And what's interesting is we did a seminar, a webinar, a customer appreciation on TOS. I'm going to say at the end of April. I could be wrong here. Don't quote me. But I think it was the end of April. I had Cindy Faber come in. Cindy and I did a presentation, and we talked about this seasonality tool, which I have down here. Now, it's kind of easy to put up, and it's pretty easy to use. And all you have to do, if you're interested in finding out whether a stock like, for example, Morgan Stanley, it's a holding that I am long, someone that we recommended. And the funny thing is that we typically see, this is the instrument down here, and here's the seasonal trend of the market. Morgan Stanley and some of the financials really have had a bad year. And quite frankly, you can kind of go back and look at a market and see whether or not what's really important is it in sync with its seasonal trend. So if I outline this, and you can kind of see if it's supposed to go up, does it go up? If it's supposed to go down, does it go down? If it's supposed to go up, is it been going up? So you got to answer your question, is the market going to respect and continue to respect its seasonal trend? If it's going to continue to respect seasonal trend, then I always ask myself, well, has it been in sync with its past seasonal tendency in recent history? And if the answer is yes, then I utilize other technical tools to help me with whether or not I want to put a trade on. If I'm going to be a directional trader, an option trader, a long-term equity option trader, or just buy the stock outright with maybe selling some out of the money premium, regardless, as traders, we are coming up with an idea to trade. It's up to us to see if the risk is worth the reward. I mean, if the trade is going to have merits, you're going to get paid. You know, we could all look at what great trades there are, but without identifying what the risk is, you really need to understand what your risk is. Seasonal analysis helps us define our risk. Are we in a high-risk state, a low-risk state? A high-risk state is trying to go short a market that's in a seasonally strong period of time. Short a stock market that's going into a seasonally strong period of time. That, to me, is high risk. All right? A high probability is to look to see if a market has been in sync with its seasonal analysis and say, hey, I've got other technical conditions that suggest this market can move higher. That is a high probability, and that's where seasonal analysis helps. So how do you get this seasonality tool? Well, real simple. On Thinkorswim, and again, that's what today is designed for, just Thinkorswim, right? So if you go over here to Style, and you hit Chart Mode, now I can go to Standard, and all of a sudden, look what popped on my chart. What popped on my chart is a candlestick with the person's pivots, and another tool that I use fondly, which is the On Balance Volume Trend tool. Now, if you take a look at this stock, you go, wow, this is a, let's face it, ugly chart, strong downtrend since December when the Fed announced the rate hike, right? The bank stocks got crushed. Since then, it has done nothing, L0. It's been in a obviously a trading range. So when we look at a market from a technical perspective, I look at this chart and I go, well, what's it really been doing? Is the volume trend making newer lows? And the answer is actually no. The volume trend is kind of closer to its breakout point from back here when the stock was trading up there, right? So to me, I look at seasonality. This stock is in a time period where it can go up based on history. Technically speaking, the volume looks more accumulative in nature rather than because of the way the trend of the volume is going, and that's what that tool teaches us. So how do I get to the point where I say, well, John, that's great, that's fine, that's dandy. Let me go and just change this up to a weekly chart. And some of you might be familiar with this little pattern here. This is a doji, and this would be a high closed doji trigger. So the market is actually in a high closed doji trigger formation, which is a bullish long signal. All right. So on a weekly basis, we have a kind of a reversal pattern. The weekly volume doesn't look great. So that's all I can tell on this chart. I can only look at this chart and see what has happened. I can't see what will happen, and that's where seasonality occurs. Is this a good time of the year or a bad time of the year for this stock? So what you do is you go up here to, if you want an answer to that, go up to Style, and then just go up to Chart Mode. Chart Mode goes from Standard, and then right there at the bottom, Seasonality. So you can look at the seasonality, and you can see that the overall trend is up. So now let's examine seasonality real quick and say, question. How many years is that seasonality? Is that an average of what? 1 year, 10 years, 20 years? What is that? Well, that would be a good question. So we go up to here, and if I'm not mistaken, wait a minute, wrong one. Oh, I had a little brain aneurysm here, guys. Sorry about that. If we go up to our time frame, wait a minute, let me get it here, and I want to look at a weekly chart, 5 years, and I want to change that to more time, I can go back and I look at the appearance. Right? So that's what we do. We go up to the little cogwheel and click on Appearance. Now, I've got seasonality, and I've got the current year in blue. I got the averages here. Now, what if I want to break this down and I want to see all the years? You see where it says Display right here in the average? If I click on that and I want to put the yearly versus the average or the yearly plus the average, I'm going to go the yearly plus the average and hit Apply and OK. As you can see, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So I really don't have a lot of time based on this chart. So I'm going to change that to 20 years. Whoa! I have just done something that I could break this down. Remember, this is the current trend of the market, and these are all individual years, and at the top of your header, they're color-coded up at the top to tell you what the change in price was. So if you really want to get into seasonal studies and find out, well, what years worked and what years didn't, and filter out over the last, in this case, 20 years, that's how you can go and get more introduction into the seasonality tool of Thinkorswim. I like to just say, you know what, I want to break down what years didn't work, but on average, since I personally, listen carefully, since I personally don't put 100% of my belief in seasonal analysis, right? I believe there's better ways of doing it. I think it's good. I use it. I think it's necessary to look at seasonal trends of markets. It keeps you focused on what the overall market conditions can do. But number one, I want to know, is this the best time of the year to buy, or are we in a time period where it's best to buy financial stocks? And if the answer is yes, then I want to do something more. And that's where my work comes in. It's called something called strength in numbers. All right? So I can run a scan. And besides Morgan Stanley, you could look at the top stock sectors and look at Goldman Sachs. You can look at JP Morgan, right? And if you think about Morgan Stanley, MS, Morgan Stanley is not you don't go to, Mom and Pa America does not walk in and get a 30-year fixed mortgage to Morgan Stanley, MS. It's an investment banker, right? So you want to compare and say, well, what are the other investment bankers, and what's their seasonality trends like? Actually, quite frankly, JP Morgan does have a seasonal tendency to go up. So the sector itself is strong. Now, the problem I think a lot of people do, and this has to be, this is not something this is something I think that it would be a good clue for you to understand what you're looking at for beginners. For beginners, most people would say the XLF is the financial sector ETF. But if you look at downright and hard of what's inside the XLF, you'll understand that it is a diversified ETF on financials. It's got the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, a commodity exchange. It's got insurers like Travelers and Metropolitan Life. It's got Wells Fargo. It's got Bank of America. It does have Goldman Sachs. It does have JP Morgan. So it's diversified. It's not looking at the investment bank segment of the marketplace. So if you're going to compare, when I say strength in numbers, I want to look and run a scan, and I want to find definitively if there is other like stocks generating buy signals, because if it is just one stock going up, gang, I don't want to be in just that one stock. That might be okay for a quick trade, but if we're starting to see the entire sector go up, it shows that there's an accumulation of money by the institutions, and they generally aren't looking to get in and out in the same hour, typically, right? Now, high-frequency trading environment's a different story, just joking around. But when we take a look at using the tools that we have here, when I have the opportunity to run scans on Thinkorswim, and if we go over here to the financials, Thinkorswim's done a phenomenal job for us breaking down the different subsectors. Look at this. We have banks, diversified regional, thrifts, mortgage, diversified financial services, consumer finance, capital markets, insurers, right? REITs, and real estate management companies. So we can really get sub-sector specific, believe it or not, with this market or this platform, Thinkorswim. And that, my friends, is really cool. Having the product is one thing, having the tools is another, but giving you a little coaching on how to put them all together, that's what really helps make people get a little more out of their trades, I think. Now, when we look at by industry, and I do go over here to the financials, I'm just going to go to select all. And if I click right now, weekly, unfortunately, it's going to tell me about Thinkorswim. It's going to tell me what did happen, not what will happen, not what did happen, based on today's price action. Today's the beginning of the week. But look at this. If the market closed right now at these prices, we've got Sovereign Self-Storage, which is a REIT. So you got all of these are REITs. You've got some insurance companies, a couple capital markets, some consumer finances, and thrifts and mortgage. And then, oh, look at all this. Let's see. Let's take a gander here together. The majority, ironically, the majority of the scans here are banks. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm sure you did. But now we need to look at what kind of banks are these. Well, you know, some of these are probably regional banks. I mean, if it says Community Bank, or I'm imagining $14.50 stock, Community West Bank shares, Citizen. These are all, would you guess with me that they're most likely regional banks, correct? Right? But we are Bank of the Ozarks, for example. So we did populate today with today's price action. Ironically, if today was Friday, it's not. Today's Monday. But what's interesting is that this platform is capable of giving me information right now that there is strength in numbers and concentration of buying to the degree that they're generating weekly buy signals at these current prices. So at this price, whoever Center State Bank is, it's generating a weekly buy signal. It's generating a weekly buy signal. So if this is going to be a true buy signal, we have to wait until Friday to see if we close there. So I'm getting a good heads up. So strength in numbers is one of the things that I was talking about that's very important. When we take a gander of some of these banks, now since I know, and I'm going to just help you with this, what the KRE is, regional bank ETFs, you know, generally speaking, the regional bank sector ETF doesn't really bode that well this time of year. Do you notice this? That's the seasonal trend of regional banks. It's generally regional banks do better later in the year. Typically, they go up, it goes down, it goes down, it kind of goes up, it did go up, it goes down, it went flatlined, it goes up, it did go up, it goes down, and it hasn't gone down. So we've kind of lost a little connectivity there with the KRE, the regional bank sector ETF. So here's how I put things together. I can run a scan and say, gee, I got a whole bunch of buy signals in a specific sector. Let me get together and see if this is a good chance that this sector might do well. And if that's the case, or if this is that time of the year where they do well, I might have a good shot at buying ahead of the seasonality. Unfortunately, this is not really a high probability for the regional banks. So in running scans, and I'll back up a minute, how did I get to the PPS sector? Well, I guess you can find out what the heck is PPS. PPS is under studies. And let's get there. So I look at a chart, and this is a regional bank ETF. This is a daily chart. I'm going to change this to weekly, just for the heck of it. Irony is, with all of those individual banks that are generating buy signals, the actual ETF, there's a sell signal right there. And a sell signal has dictated the market pressure reversed and went down. The market has recovered, I get that, but notice that there's no buy signal. There's no arrow pointing up. We don't have a weekly buy signal quite yet in the KRE. We have a lot of individual stocks that might generate buy signals on a weekly basis, but we just don't have buy signals in the KRE. How did we get the buy signals? What are the buy signals? You go over here to studies, and you go to either add a study, and if you use John Person, you'll see only two indicators. PPS, Person's Pivots. PPS stands for Person's Pivot Study. Those are the arrows, the buy and the sell. There's PPS, the buy and the sell. So just to prove to you this is correct, let's edit studies, and you will see exactly what's on this chart. First off, I have daily Person's Pivots, which you can't see because this is a weekly chart. It's a weekly chart with daily pivots. Second off, I do have on balance volume in the sub-quadrant, the lower quadrant, which is right here. So we have exactly what I'm saying to you is true according to the box here. We have Person's Pivots, we have PPS, and we have on balance volume. So let me change the Person's Pivots tool, and I'm going to go to the wheel, and I'm going to change this from daily I'm going to go to monthly. I'm going to show the study, and I'm going to hit OK, apply it, and hit OK. Bingo. Now I've got weekly charts with monthly Person's pivots. Incidentally, as a technical lesson, when we concluded the end of the month in June, you notice how connect the dots, it projected a lower red and it projects a lower green. The monthly Person's pivots is targeting, ironically for the KRE, technically a bearish negative outlook. Now I don't know if you find that interesting, but considering we just did some work together and saw that in the seasonality trend tool of Thinkorswim, the KRE is in a seasonally weak period of time. So technically, based on Person's pivots, monthly pivots is based off the high, the low, and the close of the month of June. So in the month of June, it's projecting for the month of July a bearish outlook by targeting a lower high and a lower low. So I have confirmation on a seasonality trend tool that this is not a strong time period for this sector. And then now I have a technical tool that shows that the monthly pivots are bearish. And more importantly, even though we've gotten a lift off of the lows in the regional bank sector, somehow I'm missing a buy signal. I still don't even have a buy signal on all this. So for me, I really am not going to get bullish on this market until A, we start to break out and make a newer high, A, B, maybe enter a seasonally strong period of time that improves my maybe outlook or probabilities that I could see some money to be made. So if the market is going to break out and get a trend to the upside, that's how we would combine looking at the technical studies, A, how you get the technical studies, B, and how you combine seasonality with confirming what we're looking at in the marketplace. So I would say there is a better, how do we look for better trades? And that's really kind of the key here. If I go over to the bottom chart and I'm going to maximize the sell, I'm going to go to style and I'm going to go to chart mode right here. And instead of standard, I'm going to go to seasonality. All right, so just to double check, this is the current price and that's the seasonality for the last 20 years. Regional banks typically from July into October don't bode well. So my technical Person's pivots are suggesting a lower technical, lower low and lower high for the month of July. So if we're not even in a buy signal yet for a weekly basis, so perhaps if we get near resistance, this market could fail and offer me an opportunity to go down, make newer lows as we head into the rest of July and into August and September. That, my friends, it's not saying that you want to sell it here. It's saying if we get near resistance, we would sell it because seasonally, this is not a great time of the year to be buying this sector. So what is? Ironically, the XRT in August is a time period that we see some sector strength in the market. And ironically, we have a few names that populate right now. So this is a small little guy, Ralphie boy, as we already pointed out to you. It's been kind of, as you can see, in a pretty much a trading range. This is a PPS buy signal. And it's telling us, today's Monday, this is a weekly chart. What does this tell you? It says that if the market closes here Friday, it's going to generate a buy signal. That's what that means. So I would say, well, that's interesting. It's in a trading range. It's in a buy signal. Is this a good time of the year to buy Ralph Lauren? That would be a kind of a good question, right? How would we do that? All you have to do, go up to style, and I'm just going to go change this back to the standard chart. And I must have hit a fat finger here, Ralph Lauren. There we go. So here's Ralph Lauren. We've got our chart, as you can see, I now have monthly persons pivots, and we're actually neutral. Why are we neutral? We're neutral because look at the pink or the fuchsia colored pivot is about the same value as it was last month. We do have slightly lower high and a slightly lower low, so it's giving us a neutral bearish reading. And already we're at resistance for Ralph Lauren for the month. We're already there. But if we clear at the end of this week that resistance, if we have good strong volume, we have a shot. This market could actually rally a little bit more, especially if there's strength in numbers. So how do I find out if this is a good time of the year to buy this? So basically, we're going to go right up here to Chart Mode Standard, and I'm going to change it to Seasonality. And I go, wow, interesting. Wait a minute. Look at this. Lo and behold, look at the seasonality. In June, we typically rally by June 18th, and then I mean, overall, the trend, it's a little choppy, but you definitely see there is a trend in Ralph Lauren that we seem to have a good buying in the market in this particular stock. Now, it's already rallied. So at this point in time, I don't know if we'd be wanting to chase the market because we're close to pivot resistance. And so that is a way to significantly help any trader make better trade decisions. The irony is, if you can learn to look ahead, then you will probably get better trade ideas going forward. And Ralph Lauren is actually a stock that we've been looking at since about June 24th in here, and we were looking for the market to pull back. And how do I know that? Well, in fact, this is the 627 weekly thoughts that I put out. And one of the things that we were talking about is, as we get into that seasonal time frame for stocks, we were looking for, besides some of the department stores and Target and Walmart and Nordstrom's and Macy's, but we are looking for apparel stocks like Urban Outfitters, American Eagle Outfitters, Ralph Lauren. We were looking to buy it down there or look for a breakout. So another one is Under Armour. Now, that's kind of interesting because our seasonal analysis has really helped us in the cause of looking for a lot of opportunities. Now, I can't show it to you right now with the scanner because the trades have already come to pass. If I go over here to daily charts and hit scan right now, and I'd like to get off of financials, and I'm going to go to consumer discretionary, and I'm going to go to textile, apparel, and I'm going to hit scan here, you'll notice you got Burberry. These are daily buy signals right now. And if I change this to the week, it's not going to give me a lot of new fresh buy signals, except for there's Ralph Lauren popping up, and we've already known that. But there's Skechers. That's kind of interesting. But let me show you something that has populated that we were expecting. COLM, Columbia Sportswear. Columbia Sportswear, guys. Now, this might not seem like a big deal to some of you, but Columbia Sportswear is a pretty awesome stock that basically back in May 30th generated what we call a high close doji. Columbia Sportswear has been going up. HIBB is another stock that just populated on the radar screen, or scanners, by the way, Pivot Sports. And we're starting to see an accumulation of names in this space. While it's not retail apparel per se, it's retail sportswear apparel. Lululemon, L-U-L-U, is at the top of the food chain because it already broke out. But these PPS, this buy strength in numbers, what's really cool about using the PPS indicator, it paints the picture right on the chart. It tells you emphatically what's breaking out. You can use this with any other indicator you want. Most times people tell me that this PPS indicator comes out many bars before a lot of your popular other indicators generate buy signals, which is really cool because it kind of gives you, an edge in getting in early, which can help you to define a lower risk entry. All you got to do is say, if I run scans and I'm finding a concentration of names, so like, for example, this week, based on last week's price action, we already had, last week, I can't show you, we had Urban Outfitters, AutoNation, O'Reilly Motors, Pulte Home Group, the home builders were big, right? Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, this is an interesting one because last week, let's take a look at this real quick. DKS. Last week, Dick's Sporting Good populated a buy signal. We've had Columbia Outfitters, Columbia, C-O-L-M. We've had Dick's, DKS. And now we've got HIBB. So it's not like they're buying all of them all at the same time, but we are starting to see what I would call accumulation, strength in numbers is occurring before our very eyes. This is interesting because seasonality actually did help play a role in looking ahead of stalking a market opportunity. If we know that we want to focus in on maybe retail apparel, if we know kids go back to school, I don't know about you, but every time I turned the TV on this weekend, which wasn't a lot, but you know, Wimbledon men's final, the guy's name starts with an R. I can't believe I forgot his name. All the guy did, he looked like a Jordan Spieth of tennis, right? He was Under Armour. He was Mr. Under Armour. Under Armour was, and you guys know all the symbol, you know, the symbol Under Armour, right? Under Armour. Under Armour, and I could tell you on a side note, by the way, in the Olympics, if Rory McIlroy already said he's not playing, and he's you know, the TV is going to be focused on these guys. And if Jordan Spieth plays, and we know he is under contract with Under Armour, that means, and he wins, that's going to probably have such a boost for Under Armour because people get that brand loyalty. I'm just here to tell you. And that people are starting to see that shift. The funny thing about Under Armour, and I know there was a split, but what's double interesting about Under Armour, it's in the retail apparel sportswear division or department or sector, number one. So you got the back to school, number two. But you also have the back to school, but you got the sports. You got the kids with coming back to football season. You got the girls with their soccer leagues again. And funny thing about these kids, they grow up. If you feed them, they grow up on you, you know, and they need new shoes all the time. Trust me, I've got grandchildren. I know these things. I'm experienced in this. But anyway, I just think it's interesting that we are seeing stocks that are possibly in a sector or seasonality that's generating some interest from a seasonal perspective, and we're starting to see a lot of the names subtly come by, and it is subtle. You know, one week it's this guy, the next week it's the next guy. So I would say that combining and running scans, just run your scans. Now today, Fossil populated, and I'll take a look at that with you real quick. So Fossil is the watchmaker that supplies the watches. They own Swatch, of course, and maybe you don't know this, but if you saw those big gold watches that all the kids wear from this company called Michael Kors, K-O-R-S, right? Kors. Kors, Fossil makes the Kors watches. So what this is telling us right now is that Friday, if the market closes here, it's going to generate a weekly buy signal. Now, the trend of this stock is just atrocious, right? You might say, well, it's a low risk, I'm going to buy it. But I would say, is now the best time to buy Fossil, just because that one name, you've got MOV, Movado, and, you know, between the two, these have to be, I mean, and both of these stocks look extremely similar in nature. So both of these companies probably are not really on my watch list to be a buyer because this isn't really the seasonality for them either. But needless to say, in this huge stock market rally, these guys are just getting kind of a dead cat bounce. Again, I would need to see other considerations to get in on this segment of the market. I think it's promising to see the consumer discretionary names populate, but to me, Fossil is not a textile and apparel. Luxury good, yes. Ralph Lauren, another one. So if I am going to Skechers, S-K-X, and let's take a look at Skechers together real quick. So Skechers, the one segment of the market that, and kind of funny, big downdraft, sideways forever. If I overlaid Ralph Lauren on that chart, it's going to look very similar to Skechers, right? Big down move, sideways action. So, I mean, there's a lot of, if you noticed, a lot of stocks look very similar and they trade very similar. So if you notice that, think of it this way. If they go down together, if they're all going down together, they may just start to go all up together as institutions shed their holdings there and start to accumulate again down here. So I want to not buy one stock. Remember I said that earlier. I don't want to buy just one stock because I got one name. I want to see if there's strength in numbers, if it's accumulating across the board. And so I think that's where the seasonality really helps you, and the tool that we have on Thinkorswim combined with the power of the PPS indicator really will help you pick out that strength in numbers idea that I have been teaching. So with that said, this is something that's been, as we've written about and been doing for over 20 years, guys. And now with the availability of the power that the retail public has, I mean, it's really us against high-frequency traders. It really is. I mean, the computers and the way that the institutions are able to move money around so quickly is amazing. And we know this because of the breadth analysis, right? The breadth analysis to see advancing stocks versus declining stocks move in lightning speed is amazing. If you can get an early heads up as to what sectors are going to enter a seasonally strong period of time and then have a way of running scans to find out, hey, am I seeing? And that's what this tool allows you to do. That's the message I'm trying to get to you. If you are able to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to scan in retail. I want to get it subsector specific. And you can go just whether you want auto components, whether you know, to get it down to leisure products. That's kind of cool. And that's something that, or internet, or just to humor me, today alone, if everything, by the way, closed at these price levels, they are going to generate weekly buy signals. Now that includes man's most hated store, Bed Bath & Beyond. Let me explain why this is man's most hated store. During football season, it's the beginning of the fourth quarter. It's a neck-and-neck game, and you're really looking at this game, and you want to watch this game, and your wife says, oh, honey, we got guests coming over, and we need to buy new tablecloths. Would you come to the store with me and double park for me? And we need to do it now. And the name of the store is Bed Bath & Beyond. You will harbor resentments against that stock for the rest of your life. But in any event, not that I'm picking on them in particular, but we actually have not seen consumers this year, and I'm not making this up, many of you already know this, but we've not really seen the consumer discretionary sector or consumer stocks really pick up. But this week, we are starting to see, here's a department store guy, Stage Stores, by the way, and you would only know that if you knew these subsectors. Stage Store is the parent company to Bell's Department Stores. So looking at Bell's Department Store, let's look at Stage Store's SSI. Talk about ugly. I mean, this is ugly. But talk about a bottom, right? And it's going to maybe potentially generate a buy signal. So if it is time for the department stores to pick up, I don't want to just see Stage Stores populate. I would like to see other names. How about like Dillard's, DDS? Interesting. It has just about the same kind of ugliness as far as trend, and it has sort of like we're starting to see a little pop in the market there. Everyone's familiar with J.C. Penney's, and that is the ugly stick right there. SHLD is Sears Holding. That's got to be the ugliest one of all. JWN is Nordstrom's. And, I mean, it's funny, I don't know if you noticed this, but Nordstrom's really doesn't have a lot to do with Bell's department store, but the way they trade almost in tandem, and they've been trading in tandem. So strength in numbers, we're starting to see a little bit of accumulation come into some of these department stores. Now, whether or not that had a lot to do with, of course, the last unemployment report, neither here nor there, but we are starting to see strength in numbers, and we are starting to see some of these names come alive. And again, these are all weekly scans in the sector. So I think it's the tool, if we overlaid, again, in finding out, number one, over the last couple days, we're at the top of the range. There's a gap down here, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But what I'm looking at is the larger picture. If over the next couple weeks, we see the overall trend in the back-to-school sector doing better. We've already noted that we've seen Urban Outfitters, URBN, right? Now, Urban Outfitters generated a high-close doji pattern last week. I mean, these are, for over an 11% move. I mean, that's not going to, depending on the size and your position, put you in a mansion in Bel Air. But you know what? We're getting a lot of great buy signals in this sector that did come due to the alert of seasonal analysis. So I wanted to get together as just a group, Thinkorswim users. You guys are obviously incredible clients, and I think you deserve to get kind of used to this. I want to share some more stuff with you, just kind of a real simple thing. We did this presentation sort of with Cindy Faber back in April. And back then I announced that we had a cruise that were going on in the Western Mediterranean. And we did everything except for go to France. And the reason we didn't go to France is because they were on strike. But we were in Barcelona, we went to Rome and Florence, Pompeii, we were in Amalfi. I mean, just incredible. It was an awesome trip, awesome time. And the next event that we're hosting is our 3-day seminar down here in Palm Beach. With that said, the last time I did this, I don't know if that slide rings a bell with some of you that were here before. We did this presentation. We talked about putting things together. And I did not ask anyone for any feedback. I didn't ask anyone. This gentleman actually sent this email in, which I find really kind of cool, and I'm going to tell you why it's cool. Because, read this for a second. He's using Thinkorswim. He came to the webinar that we did on the seasonality on toss. He uses the PPS signal and Person's pivots. And it's helped him guide him in the trades. He has my newsletter. It's been helpful, blah, blah, blah. And here's what he did. This is why this is so cool. He took the time to screenshot and sent me a PowerPoint. These are not my charts. These are his charts using Thinkorswim and applying what we put together. So the first thing is, if you notice here, he finally learned how to utilize the scans. There's the PPS. That's not my chart. That's the PPS indicators. There's the sell signal right there, the arrow there, there's a buy signal right there. This was Jazz Pharmaceutical. This is his writing about the OBV, not using the volume anymore. And then, of course, looking at the seasonality of this market, noting that the seasonality is strong for this stock. And he made money. And he put his comments and sent it to me. It brought a tear to my eye. I mean, it's like I can understand now how a teacher teaches kids and then watches their students become like, rocket scientists of the world. It was really awesome. This is another one looking at Frontline, and he did the same thing. He looked at the seasonality. Seasonality is good. HCD weekly, success is blah, blah, blah. The industry group is strong, and that's the key. The industry group is strong. That's strength in numbers. That's the kind of neat thing that I'm trying to tell you guys. This is Gilead Science. Apparently, he mismanaged the trade. He risked too much of his portfolio on one trade. It took too long to move. Sold everything. He entered at 94.23, and he sold everything at 97.60. And, of course, it went up to 103. We should all have that problem of buying something at 94 and selling it at 97.60. We should all have that problem. I felt so bad for him. I'm joking, of course. But I share this with you because I never asked him to do any of this. I can't believe he took the time to do this, send it, and say, hey, I listened to what you had to say. I put it to use. It actually worked. It's pretty cool. And then he shared with me the results. And I think that, you know, if an individual can do that, I think you guys can do that, right? So, all in all, I like doing these sessions with you guys, at least the webinars, that we could do this. And I think that a lot of things that we try to do for Thinkorswim clients is, besides saying, hey, you know, these indicators have been there a long time, what we plan on doing is to put out eventually the quarterly pivots. We're still working on trying to get that Commitment to Traders report there up on Thinkorswim. And, you know, it just seems the next thing you know, I got more gray hair on my head. At least I have hair. That's the good thing. And, you know, things move fast in this day and age. Hopefully, things move so fast, the industry has changed, and what we trade is changing. We're trading more leveraged ETFs. We're trading more stocks. I find myself trading probably less futures and more stocks nowadays, only because of the fact that you know, we can trade more a trend type of reversals, swing trading at its best. Anyway, this is a steel company, and I thought that this was kind of nice because we were talking about way back then in April. This is April. We were talking about steel stocks, and he regrets buying a small position. I'm just not sure he regrets buying a small position because he bought a small position right there. Anyway, I guess he regrets buying it. So you know what I love about this? The honesty. I sold too soon. I didn't buy enough. I love that honesty, you know, and this is what makes us to be better traders, that you could see what someone else is going through and maybe it relates to you. But the fact that we were able to teach something, have it work for someone, is very powerful. So I think that you guys, you know, hopefully can see that probably what generally works over time, you'll eventually see it in the news and things of that nature. One of the trades that we talked about a few weeks ago was, in fact, two trades that we tried to get on, which we did was in Under Armour and Ralph Lauren. They were both calendar spread opportunities. They were fantastic trade setups for the calendar spread, and they're working very nicely. There's certain times that we, based on our indicators and seasonalities, can say, gee, I want to be in the trade. It could take time to develop. Perhaps this is the right strategy for me. So what's really neat is that usually Thinkorswim clients have a lot of experience in option theoretics and option mechanics. So, you know, I don't have to tell someone about being positive theta. I don't, you know, we don't have to, you know, being long a call. I don't need to have that kind of conversation. Most of you understand that. But if you can take an option trader who understands when's the best time to write premium or buy premium and say, hey, I have some directional skill sets that I think would be dynamic for you. That's what's really cool. Anyway, Thinkorswim platform offers that. And once again, I think it's really kind of cool that we can come over here, create the scans, and once again, if you go over here to study, and many of you have seen this before, I'm just going to do it one more time. Unfortunately, they don't list it by my name anymore. They just list it by license study. So if you're trying to find buy signals, you have to go down and find PPS buy signal. If you want to find sell signals, if you're bearish, you think the rally. So eventually the rally is going to end, right? Eventually this market, you know, we're either doing one of two things right now. And I'll share this thought. This is my thoughts for this week, by the way. All right. We're either doing one of two things. one of two things. Either we are forming an inverted head and shoulders bottom, and by the way, it's hard to see this. This is the NYSE. Either we're forming a head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders bottom. We have a strong breakout with the breadth. Volume's not great. Seasonality's not good. But if just some miracle, this is an inverted head and shoulders bottom, the measurement on a confirmed breakout projects the measurement of the inverted head and shoulders, measuring from the head to the neckline. It measures a breakout of about almost 14%. Now I look at that and I go, what in the hell is going to constitute a 14% movement from Friday's close, by the way? Now listen to me carefully. Don't argue. Don't type anything in the room. Don't freak out. This is supposition. It's theory. Friday's close. If the market breaks out, and this really is, and quite frankly, I look at the volume action and I see it has that kind of mirroring head and shoulders inverted pattern. I look at the breadth analysis and it broke out and it's leading prices. I get that. But the volume's light. Maybe volume comes into the market. Seasonally speaking, not a great time to be buying the NYSE. So what's going to propel this thing to go up 14% if the measurement is indeed an inverted head and shoulders bottom? So based on this, I would say, you know what, that's hard to believe. So that's one scenario. The second scenario, which is what I kind of believe the market's going to do, is for maybe a broadening top pattern. I can't draw with the life of me. I wish I could, but if you can see, I already drew it on the charts. Maybe we're forming a broadening top pattern. Yes, we got strong breadth in the NYSE. No, the volume's not great. But monthly pivot, according to the person's pivot indicator, would project move about 2% away from Friday's close. Now, to me, that's more of a realistic scenario with that seasonal tendency of the market to be so weak right now. I don't know about you, but I have to A, respect the person's pivots, B, check out the seasonal tendency, and then C, look at the technical conditions, both breadth and volume, when trading indexes. All right? So for me, my work, and what I try to help people understand, is which is the likely scenario, a 14% move in a seasonally weak period of time, or possibly a 2% move from Friday's close in a seasonally weak period of time. Maybe something in between as well. That's possible. So I think it's kind of interesting that if we get near monthly pivot resistance, now listen carefully, if we start to get any indexes move another 2% higher, all you do is you go over here to study and you change this up. You go to license study and you run PPS sell signal. Now, instead of consumer discretionary, I would go by, and you can change. One of the nicest things about Thinkorswim is the amount of products they've listed for us to categorize, right? So if we take a look at the market, I'm going to go where I just had it. If I go over here, NYSE, so I'm going to hit scan. So I'm going to run a scan on the NYSE. And, well, today, obviously, the market was up, but we didn't see, I mean, we had stars. That pops on my radar screen right there in the beverages, but I didn't get any concentration of any named sectors populating on my screen, did I? Right? So perhaps we're a little early in running the scans right now, but this is another way of finding out really how good was today's action. If the indexes are up, listen carefully. If the indexes are up, and you see a nice move in the S&P 500, a nice move in the Qs, a nice move in the Russell, a nice move in the NICE, and then you run a daily scan to find out, well, how many sell signals populated. All of a sudden, it didn't happen today, but I'm saying one day, if you wake up and you run scans and the market's up and you get a boatload of sell signals, that is showing that there's market internal changing going on. The more daily sell signals you get when an index goes up is not great. It's probably showing us a market internal reversal. So the PPS indicator believe it or not, and let's take a look at stars real quick, STZ. This is really, so there it is, yep, it did generate a sell signal, and yes, that is a low close doji pattern on top of it. So Constellation Brands did generate a little sell signal, which means it's probably going to go from a strong uptrend to a what? Consolidation pattern for a little while. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Well, if it was ever due for a pullback, I guess this would be not what I would say. It's not quite parabolic quite yet, but it certainly seems to me that it is running out of steam. And why I say that is because the highs are getting not as high. You're starting to see the market do what? Make less pronounced higher highs. You know, you had a high here, and then a high here, and then a high here. So you started to get substantially higher highs. Now you're starting to get lower, not as significant higher highs. So I would be on guard in monitoring stars. And boy, by the way, if there was ever a time to go to look at style, seasonality, and say, it doesn't demonstrate a lot of strength or weakness between now and August 1st. So perhaps that daily sell signal is a good sign that the market's going to, the advance is just going to stall and the market might just go sideways. That might be just on any rally over the next couple days. If the market pops back a little bit, a good that would be a stock and a market condition that I would do a credit call spread on. So anyway, that's how I would put things together here and utilize that. Okay. So in conclusion, if you guys, we did this offer the other day and on Thursday, and I'm going to throw it to you guys if you're interested. We have the weekly thoughts and observations. It's my monthly report. I do it every week. Send it out by email. Gives you a listing of everything that I'm looking at and why. It's a great way of preparing for the week. It gives you what I'm looking at. It gives you stocks that we're looking to buy for the week. For example, here's like foods and grocers, last week's picks. It gives us what we're looking for, potential swing trades if we get, like we're looking for the move up to 2143. This was from last week, carryover. We do seasonal commodity spreads. When to get in, when to get out. Every single spread has over 80% probability win for the life of the back test that we've done. Of course, what's coming out for the week. Don't forget, by the way, incidentally, this Thursday, Bank of England minutes, and we're having the beige book on Wednesday. I'm sure everyone will know about that or hear about it between now and then anyway. But these are kind of the things that we're looking for, trades that we want to put on for the week, levels of which we're looking for pullbacks. In the Qs, by the way, we are looking for a pullback, and then this is a particular strategy that we're looking to do on the pullback. So not only do we do that, but email alerts. If you're interested in this, try 1 month. I'm not pushing anything down anyone's throat. You guys know I don't do that. $49 a month. But if you're interested in taking advantage of this and you like it, it's $1.50 a day. I mean, we're talking $12.50 a week. But if you're interested in just trying it out, $49, you may not have known this, but this little course was what launched the Person's Candle and Pivot. I taught this course at the Chicago Board of Trade before the CME bought it out. This course right here was what I used to teach professional traders. That course right there will teach you about the HCD, the LCD. That course, we will give you that course for free if you're interested. All you got to do is go to this link, personsplanet.com/report. If you go to the website there, this is the page. It'll take you there. See, personsplanet.com/report. And just click on that. You can kind of see what you get. We also include every week, Monday, we do a video, what's called planning and scanning. We record it. We send the link out. You guys get to watch it, see live what we're looking at, the support, resistance, the conditions of the markets, what strategies we're looking at. We also back up with what we were just, what trade alerts we did, like a call spread in Apple from last week, by the way, and little things like that. So if you want to take a shot and say, well, I've seen John before, and I think I'd like to try to see what he's doing, this is your chance. Take advantage of this, and we'll also include the course for you. The course used to cost $279, so I think you're getting your money's worth if you want to learn more about candles and pivots according to John Person. That's all I have. Nothing else. It's not a lot of money. It's something I think you will find, and you can find that right there at personsplanet.com. And I believe you can click on that and look at this report that we did last week, which was really cool because we talked about the bullish potential breakout in the market, which did come to fruition. So with that said, I hope you found value in today's session on putting together the seasonality, the person's pivots, really the use behind that person's pivots, and how to use these scans on Thinkorswim. Thanks, everybody. Andy, thank you very much. I always appreciate your feedback, Andy. And therefore, Harish Modi, what LCC means in the weekly report. It's yes. Last conditional change. Great question, by the way. It's very important. In fact, that LCC, ironically, you see this book here? I taught about the last conditional change in 2000, and that was, I thought it was 2006. It was actually 2005. In 2005, I don't know where 11 years went, man, but I can tell you this. This is no longer brownish. It's now kind of whitish. So the good news is I do have hair, and I still generally smile. But in any event, enough of the drawing. Sorry to put you through that. Thank you all very much. A lot of you guys, the last additional change, something we wrote about right there in that Candlestick book. That was a phenomenal book. I got to go because I'm supposed to be re-editing for the second edition that's supposed to come out. And with that said, a lot of jazz aficionados in the room. Thank you very much, guys. Nice job, by the way. And I'll see you on the flip side. Hope you guys enjoyed today. We did record it. We'll send it out so you can review how we look at selecting the seasonality on that one little tool. B, how you pick out the scans. Number 2. 3, why the different time frames are important, and C, looking at industry leadership. So hope that gives you guys some, again, insights. If it worked for the gentleman, Jesse, who took the time to send me those charts, and I really found the honesty of that individual to be incredible. I mean, I got in, I got out, I should have gotten in more. That is phenomenal. It was just awesome. Anyway, God bless everybody. Thank you all very much. And you know what? Nothing needs to be said about what is going on in Dallas. I think we all know. So, but our hearts and prayers to those as well, and to all the men who serve our country and women. Thank you all very much. Have a great week, man.